Fire that consumed several establishments within Karanja area in Kibra on Monday night may have died down by Tuesday morning, but the after effects are still causing bitter emotions amongst those in the community who are affected. While a group of religious leaders gathered at the area to pray and seek initial reconciliation among the affected communities, many still feel that justice must be served on the perpetrators. Leila Mohammed visited Kibra constituency and brings us the tales of a broken people seeking compensation, closure through the judicial system, and a lasting peace in their community.
From afar, the impact of a night that terror reigned once again in this Karanja village of Kibra was evident. In the compound of the PCA Church Kibra, it was a tearful moment, with many asking why things escalated so fast. The prayer hall and offices took the first beating, with the goons attempting to remove window grills. As the faithful pick up the pieces, they could only sigh and note that while this has cut deep, they can only depend on a higher being for solace. This is one of the rooms of PCA Kibra, and it still feels hot like a baking oven. The remnants of a night of terror inside Kibra constituency. This morning, religious leaders have met and have prayed on both this side of the divide and on the other side of the creek where the mosque is, and they are calling for peace and tolerance at this hour when this community is bleeding.
To have two places of worship destroyed in less than a few hours between each other means that there is something very deep that needs to be exercised, that needs to be removed from our culture of politics.
In a matter of minutes, two neighboring houses of God that are put apart by a river in the middle of the land they stand on were on fire, with the community recalling the memories of the 2007 post-election violence.
Liliathirika sana mwaka 2007, lilipata kubomolewa na mengi yakafanyika. Lakini baada ya hapo likasimamishwa tena.
Businesses that share a space with the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Kibra were not spared. The community here had just gone through prayer and opening of the fast when they say all hell broke loose.
Police walikuwa tu wamesimama kando hivi on your way for Jesus. So hakukuwa hata na shida yoyote. After 1 or 2 hours tukasikia vitu zinaporwa.
The mosque was saved. However, the madrasa classrooms were damaged in the melee.
So, of course, as a commission, we condemn that strongly. And ours is to pledge to work closely with RCK, with the community elders in Kibra.
The people of Kibra are not ready or willing to be dismembered or to be used as tools of political convenience in the hands of some politicians.
The police who attended the gathering Tuesday came under fire for their role in enabling the situation to reach this level.
To members of the public to maintain law and order, as we also enforce the same.
As the community looks at the next steps in order to rebuild what they have lost, the religious leaders have insisted that God's guidance in this situation is key, and the connection to the Almighty at this moment for these people is prayer. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
And as that happened, the Nairobi professionals have called on the executive to engage with the opposition side led by Raila Odinga to have a national convention that will resolve the current political wrangles dogging the country. Speaking in Nairobi, the professionals led by Dr. Isaac Kalua Green say the political stretch in the country is worsening the country's economic crisis to the detriment of the common man at the bottom of the economic pyramid.
Also urge the executive, the legislature and the Council of Governors to convene a very urgent meeting to address the prevailing challenges, particularly the cost of living Kenyans are paying. We sincerely urge the Azimio coalition to consider calling off their weekly demonstrations to give room to a national engagement, not just a dialogue.
Tunatoa mwito wa dhati kwa viongozi wa tabaka zote na hasa viongozi wa kisiasa wakubali tukutane kama wazalendo wa Jamhuri ya Kenya ili tusuluhishe matatizo ambayo yanatukumba kama wa Kenya.
And those are just a few statements from leaders across different stakeholders across the different areas in this country who are now calling for a ceasefire, a de-escalation of the situation. And it has been quite an intense couple of days. I'll just take a look at the paper now, but I'm not alone in studio this morning. I am with Gabriel Mudhuma, political governance analyst. Karibu sana. Good morning, Gabe. We also do have Nurdin Kagai, advocate of the High Court and also political analyst. Very good morning, Karibu.
Thank you for
and Abdullahi Alas, a policy and governance analyst, journalist, as well as columnist. Thank you, Abdullahi, for joining us this morning. And just to have a look at the Daily Nation as we begin. And this is what we have on the front page. Wanted, sponsors of Kenyatta farm attack. And we can see some faces, so we can be able to put at least faces to some of the vandals who were there at the farm there. That's the Northland City farm. Yesterday greeted the brazen invasion of a property belonging to the family of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, as the Nation, of course, the Daily Nation, established that the raid was planned and funded by 3 politicians and executed by a well-known gang for hire. Will Inspector General of Police Japhet Koome bring the culprits along with sponsors of violence and looting during Azimio's protest to book? This is the full splash on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and it will be informing the basis of our conversation as well this morning. I want to begin with Gabriel. Certainly a lot has happened. We've seen, the chaos that happened in Kibera. 3 people, I believe, have already been reported to have died because of, as a result of the chaos that we've seen. I want to get your assessment from where you sit as a Kenyan, as you analyze the situation right now, looking back at Monday and the aftermath, the preceding days. What do you make of it?
Zainab, good morning, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. First of all, it is what one of your reporters has called it. It is deteriorating into madness. We saw, this is not the first time we are seeing this. Last Monday, when the maandamano started, not only have we seen the loss of property, we are now seeing the loss of life. A student in Maseno, has been killed. Many other people have been injured. Businesses have been destroyed.
Right.
Businesses have also been attacked, as you have seen. The conversation that we are having.
Right.
This environment has already precipitated a crisis, as you would call it. But more than that, most Kenyans can tell you that it will continue to deteriorate,
right,
primarily because it's an environment that creates an opportunity to do all these ills. No lawlessness, Zainab, of any kind should be tolerated. Whether you're looking at the subject matter of our conversation this morning, which is the attack on Kenyatta's farm, whether you're looking at it from the point of view of party office in Kisumu being burnt down, whether you're looking at it from a point of view where people are going to businesses and destroying them, looting, it's the kind of lawlessness that should not be accepted. But now, since people have seen an environment which has been created by the so-called maandamano, whether it's right or wrong, there is that element that we are seeing right now, Zainab, of it wasn't me. And that is what scares me. These ones are pointing fingers to those ones,
right,
and those ones are pointing fingers to these ones. But who is in the middle, Zainab? It's me and you. And if it continues like this, guess what? We will continue suffering. To me, that should guide our discussion today. The person who is actually hurting, as you have put it, is the person at the bottom of the pyramid, who is standing to speak on their behalf.
The Wanjiku, the common man.
Exactly, because when their businesses are destroyed, it is something that there's something funny that happened yesterday. Albeit the fact, Zainab, albeit the fact that we are against, that we demonize the attack on the farmland and the businesses of certain people. Who is speaking on behalf of them choosing Dogo, who's unable to run their business or whose businesses have been destroyed?
I want us to, because this covers just a general assessment of what the Daily Nation has written about, I'm going to read out part of the report here, how politicians planned and executed attack on Kenyatta farm. So this is just one aspect of what we'll be looking at. And it says that it was just a matter of, let me get that correctly, it was a matter of when and not if the criminal politically motivated raid on the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta's family property would happen. And security organs were aware of the plot but did nothing. That's what the Daily Nation is reporting. And when the invasion did happen on Monday amid anti-government protests led by opposition leader Raila Odinga, the target was that expansive farm at Kamakis on Eastern Bypass. Another attack was also staged at a gas cylinder maker, East Africa Spectre Limited, a company that is linked to the family of Odinga by a gang that was ferried from Dandora and Kayole. Plans to raid the Kenyatta property were mooted last Friday and firmed up by Sunday evening. That's what Nation has established. 2 MPs, a former governor and a popular Kiambu musician, are among those who reportedly played lead roles in mobilizing the gang last Friday when the plot to counter Monday's demonstrations was hatched. The youths were recruited from Kiambu and Nairobi, the Nation understanding that they were ferried from Ruiru, Githurai, and the subsequent areas around there. And each, according to their sources, they said that they were each paid 3,000 shillings, handed a couple of weapons, and were used to mow down trees at the vast farm. This is so this is a full report here in conjunction again with what happened in Kibera. Arsonists had battled protesters all day. This is according to what residents said. So what started as a normal day of protest turned into a night of arson, tears and death as machete-wielding goons torched market stalls and a church in the Olympic area of Kibera in Nairobi. You have Idris Ahmad, who's an imam at the local mosque, said 1 man had been shot dead during the attack and 2 others were nursing gunshot wounds. The fire that began around 7 p.m. left a trail of destruction at the Presbyterian Church of East Africa, where the arsonists had gained access and destroyed property whose value is yet to be established at this point. Nurdin, looking at all this, you know, so much has happened. And we're dating it back to the first day of the protest, which was Monday last week. And this Monday, it was much more intense than what we had anticipated. What do you read from, what is your assessment of the situation on the ground right now?
You see, first and foremost, I saw the directions from the ODPP to the police asking them to do investigations. But as per your daily, I think you've actually done your own investigations, which we are waiting to see what the police will do. Because at the end of the day, if at all investigations need to be done, then there are those people who should be seen as people of interest. They have leaders who made certain comments over the weekend. We have issues where, as we can see, it was planned, and we are being told the police knew about it and nobody did anything about it. So the question is, when this government came into office, it told us that they will not use state agencies or police to actually interfere with political issues.
But we're here to get a full report from the investigative agencies as well on the scene.
Yes, so
this is just an investigation that was done by
you see, the sad reality is that when it took, the number of hours it took before the police actually went to the scene. You see, when you read the statement, the IG says that they responded swiftly to Spectra and the Northlands farm. But the reality is on the ground that they went yesterday. So you ask yourself, was it planned? Was it known? At the end of the day, is it political? Because at the end of the day, if you listen to the tones and the statements from the political leaders who are actually in part of UDA, it tells you that there is something beyond this.
But we have seen the accusations from both sides of the political divide.
At the end of the day, you see, the problem is that we never like speaking the truth in this country. And when things spiral out, now we go to do damage control via propaganda. Now, if, for example, you say, I will go to point X and do ABCD, and it happens, are you not a person of interest? Of course you are. Then when you come and say that I was misquoted by who? And that is how we always let these political leaders escape being held to account. Because you cannot state something, then when something happens, you say you're misquoted by the media. Because we are not foolish and we're not children at the end of the day. The sad reality is that people think that they can spin anything courtesy of the fact that they are in office. At the end of the day, the faces that have been shown in the papers, those 3 that have been circled, those are the common small fish, like what we see in the corruption cases. There are those small fish who are bundled in court, procurement officer, supply chain manager, but nobody goes for the real big fish at the end of the day. So we're waiting to see what the investigations will come up with, and we are waiting to see, because at the end of the day, it's not just Northlands. Because in Kibra, I have friends who live in Kibra, and I visited that area. It is very sad that you're trying to pit people against one another. People who live in the same area. And you call yourself, whoever did it, if it is political, if you call yourself a political leader, so you are leading people to kill one another. So if by misfortune, everybody dies in this country, who will you lead? That is what we call political bad manners. Because at the end of the day, we need to hold these people accountable. Okay. Because when you issue insightful comments, for example, and nothing is done, we've seen NCIC talking right now. They say they have summoned them and what have you. And that NCIC is a toothless organization. It can't do anything at the end of the day. We are waiting to see what the IG, because we've seen him to come out and he's bold and has a lot of bravado. We're waiting to see what will happen beyond today and the course of the week, because heads have to roll. Okay. If people plan, for example, the attacks, heads have to roll. And going to those who are in the demonstration, you see, Article 37 says they have a right to demonstrate. But at the end of the day, it needs to be peaceful and unarmed. Now the challenge,
but that is not exactly what we saw.
Exactly.
So then we've seen a blame game, right?
Yes.
We'll come back to that, Nurdin. I'm going to give you an opportunity because we're going to get much deeper into that conversation. But also joining us in studio as well is Javas Bigambo, lawyer and governance specialist. A very good morning. Welcome to the studio. But before I get to you, Abdullahi, I want to get your general assessment of where we are as a nation looking at the events that transpired this week.
Good morning, Zainab, and Ramadan Kareem Mubarak. Kenya is at war when the political class are at war. Every time the political class have to fight over power or resources, we have problem in this country. Raila was the same guy in 2018 up to 2022. He was with Uhuru and there was no violence in this country. Now, tables have turned. Gachagua and Ruto on this side. Who would have thought that Martha Karua and Raila Odinga will go to Uhuru's defense in his farm?
So do you say the political class defines the trajectory within which our
country goes?
Every
time we are ordinary Kenyans and we don't fight over anything. I mean, 30 million Kenyans are struggling to feed themselves or either jobless. So on the issue of the attack of either Northland or any other private premises, that's why we have intelligence in this country. We have National Intelligence Service, we have different military, we have different institutions that are gathering information. So the question will be, did they know that this is going to happen and someone somewhere in government told them to just take a break? Because why will police respond to it? We were told already there is a police station inside that place. Why did we have a police station in a private land in the first place? It shows the impunity even from the former regime. So Gachagua is now in charge for less than 70 hours. He seems to be very comfortable in his office. What does that indicate? When I've listened to Ichungwa last night on Citizen, and we have listened to his utterances. The deputy president is on record with utterances that does not, bring confidence. So 120 sheep cannot be stolen by a small group. That was planned. Who planned it? It is obvious that they're on the side of UDA government. Because last Monday, there was no attack of
But you cannot substantiate that, of course, without any
we always allude to things that glaringly appear on what the utterance of the political class are saying. Because why will Gachagua, 18th of March, Ichungwa says that, and then two people who are considered to be outside government, who are leaders in this country, is attacked. So we should not insult our intelligence, but we know the country is, Kenya has never been a good country in terms of rule of law. We have always been breaking laws because right now you're talking about investigation and reports. This is the country that we had 44 task force and more than 55 commissions. What has happened? So we will wait and see what happens tomorrow again. Now, if the president is already outside the country, the deputy president is comfortable coming to his office at 5 and telling us he's coming to 5. You are coming to 5 to your office. What are you doing? Building the nation. How do you build a nation that people in the north, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, Samburu, Baringo, they are taxed. It has rained. Well, we are harvesting water. We are very busy running in the streets. What is all going to do? What is all this going to do to our economy?
Okay.
First of all, when you talk about no one is addressing the rights of the ordinary person, who has ever addressed the right of ordinary person from 1963? No one. Why do we have people dying of hunger 60 years after independence? No one has addressed their problem, because the architects of Kenyan political or governance theory were those that were elites. Who are we fighting? It's the son of a former president, the son of a former deputy president, the son of a guy who claims to be a Mau Mau, a guy who was raised by Moi. These are still the elites who are fighting. Ordinary Kenyans in Isli or Nairobi or Mandera or Busia have no problem with each other. So unless Kenyans will realize that when it comes to election time, we are divided along the ethnic line. It's the tool that the political class has ever used successfully. So unless we say, we the Kenyan people, regardless, I did not choose to be a Muslim. I did not choose my parents. Okay? I did not choose to be born in this country. So why should that be the subject of discussing me as a person than what I can contribute to this country?
Okay.
So poverty
is
the baseline of chaos in this country.
All right. Javas, I want to get your thoughts on this. Where do we stand as a nation this morning in light of everything that has happened?
Well, thank you and good morning. First, I see on the cover page of the Standard, the title or the headline, Portrait of Anarchy, which I stand to disagree. This is not the portrait of anarchy. This is the portrait of bad leadership in this country, which of course the consequential effect is anarchy. You ask, where do we stand as a country? I think we are not just standing as a country. We are comfortably seated as a country with and babysitting the kind of leaders that we have in Kenya today. We are here because we have made deliberate choices to be here. Because it is we who listen to the incitement and in fact are humored and entertained by the remarks that are insightful by these politicians. We are the ones that are willingly being paid to go and cause mayhem as citizens of this country. We are the ones that give them attention. So we are here because we brought ourselves here. But should we remain here? No, we must not. In fact, everything that is happening in this country today is disgusting. It is sad. It is, in fact, very bad that a country that has traveled so far through our history, we refuse to learn. When you turn the pages of history, whether in this country or even globally, you realize that every kind of major disaster has been because of politicians. Wagala massacre of 1984 was because of politicians who were ruling at the time. When you look at the 2007-2008 post-election violence, it was because of politicians. When you look at the World War I and World War II, it was because of politics. All things that are happening that are so bad to mankind is because of politicians. Yet these politicians come from among us. What is it that we can do as a people to make sure that we get to have the finest to lead the people? Now, beyond us, in fact, frowning at the anarchy and the bad leadership to which we are lamenting, why is it that we still continue to give audience to these leaders? For example, even just yesterday, politicians on both sides, even start with the press conference by the Azimio leadership. When you examine the content of that presser, you realize that it's not a press statement that is gravitating towards having a cohesive nation. It is a press statement and remarks by leaders who are in fact trying to push the country on the brink of the precipice.
Fueling the tensions are already
And that is the problem that we have. But why is it then that we are glued still in this situation? And pardon me for this, media. Today, as I sit here, media is politically embedded. When you look at even the coverage of stories, you realize how there is embedded journalism, embedded media in terms of inclined reporting. Now, my relative earlier had spoken about...
But isn't that an unfair assertion? I mean, at the end of it all, the media is there to report on everything that is happening, from whatever the statements that are being made from across the political divide and the situation on the ground as it appears. Right?
The issue is not a blanket condemnation of media. No. In fact, media has always helped to put everything in the spotlight. But when you look at some elements of embedded journalism, you realize it through the kind of coverage that's given. For instance, when we had the first Monday of demonstrations, we had lots of places looted. There was no alarmist reporting or coverage to the extent that the coverage of Spectre International and the Northlands Farm have been covered. That is a demonstration of embedded journalism. Now, the other thing is that on the night of the Kibra Inferno, when a church, the PCA church, was set ablaze and a mosque was attacked and set ablaze, the county government of Nairobi sent firefighting engines and firemen and women to try and put out that fire. They succeeded. That has not even been given the necessary coverage that is due to the county government for that great effort.
Credit.
So you see, that is embedded reporting. And that's why I'm saying that media is very critical in society. But what is important is that the media should not find itself in a situation that's boxed because of politics and political interests.
Okay, let me hear from Gabe. What is your assessment of how the media, before we get it, and I know we have to take a quick break, do you feel the media has been fair in its reporting on everything that has happened?
Honestly, sometimes I think they've had this laissez-faire approach in some of the things that they've been reporting. It was just the other days I had a media personality actually being taken to task of a statement that he made to really preempt an entire investigation. And I was asking, well, yes, you have the offices that are mandated by the Constitution to be able to give us what we want to know. Because let's face it, Zainab, we have had so many statements that people have made, not only politicians, but media personalities. And you question, where have they gotten their story? Now, I'm not against investigative journalism. No, that's not what I'm against. But let us see the balance of fairness when you're reporting something which you have gone to investigate. Let there be a rhyme that people are able to follow. And not only that, let there be an element of what you call judicial carefulness, such that you're not seen to, to really bend on one side. And I think that's where majority of Kenyans are starting to see, wait a minute, are these, and it's not all of them, or is the media in bed with certain cliques of politicals?
But
like Javas has put it correctly.
But isn't this a sort of a perception or a narrative that has been driven to appear as though the media is siding on...
No, Zainab, it's not a perception.
Right.
It's not a perception, because, let's face it, there has been a student and other people who have been killed. Lives have actually been taken away. There has not been that pushy, coverage. Secondly, there was, if we are to be honest, there was a supermarket. Somebody came out and said they have lost an investment of 20 million plus in Tasia, the Mwindimosi supermarket.
We covered that story.
Yeah, but yes, you covered it, but it was not given the huge prioritization as we have seen in Spectre and Northlands. That's what Javas is taking, and I kind of tend to agree. Secondly, you realize there was a UDA office in Kisumu which was torched. It was not covered with the same exertion of media play as these other two companies. So
don't you feel like this would perhaps, I don't sit on an editorial desk, but perhaps this would take, and you can all correct me if I'm wrong, because we're here to take criticism as well. The media can also is accountable, right? Do you feel, because this is something that happened on, property that belongs to the family of a former president, doesn't it give it a little bit more of prominence?
And I feel this is where we get it wrong. If it gives it prominence, it is giving it by the virtue of what the former head of state occupied. That is it. Okay. But the question is, where does that leave the common man? Who speaks on his behalf? The leaders that you're talking about at one point said that they were talking on behalf of that person. Guess what? That is not how it's playing out. But where the media, I feel, in my own view, where we should hold you, we put you in a very high pedestal because we expect you to report nothing but facts. Give us the information so that we can see it for
and
ourselves.
I think we've been able to do that, Gabriel.
Yes,
we have to
report facts
okay.
and allow us to sieve which we feel, you know, is geared to the population.
Okay.
But when they twist, you know,
media, like a dog, is supposed to be mankind's friend, the common man's friend.
All right.
And that's what people anticipate to see. And in fact, media, even all the media men and women, they are within the spaces of ordinary folk. And that's why the people find pleasure in trusting the media, because it's one and the same thing. This trust should not be betrayed. Now, at the risk of seeming as though we are pelting stones at the media, the issue here is that...
okay, because we have to take a break very quickly.
Yeah, people need to feel comfortable that the plight of the ordinary folk
has been
covered with the same elevation as the other stories for the big men and
all right. But I must also put it out before we do take a break that media, members of the media who actually covered Monday's protests found themselves in the middle of the Hard Rock and the Wall, you know, and they were in between police officers who did not want the media capturing the events and the protesters who said, we don't want you capturing our faces. So they were found in a very hard place,
Zainab.
right?
And one thing probably very quickly, we have seen even somebody saying that we will not go with media XYZ because they are not giving us the prominence that we need. And to me, which is scary. Coming from a leader, what you're saying is that you want to twist the media to only cover which you feel is what your particular people want to listen.
All right.
And that is wrong.
Let's take a very quick break. When we come back, Nurdin Kagai, Abdullah Alas will give you an opportunity as well. You've been quite quiet. You're also a journalist. So we'll take a very quick break. We're going to be back. Talk to us. The hashtag we're using is AML Live NTV.
With Glovo, you have the city in your hands. Unatamani chakula different? Order Glovo ujaribu restaurant mpya. Diapers zimeisha? Order Glovo and save the day. Download the app and order anything you want.
At Safaricom Foundation, we partner with communities across all 47 counties by advancing education, by enhancing healthcare, by supporting economic opportunities. Because when we unite, there's nothing we can't do.
Daring Abroad makes me dare. It's the only show of its kind in the world. And now, it's bigger.
And even more entertaining and informative than before.
Hapa kunaitwa Kakoe na inatubaba sana.
From London to Jersey Island.
Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo to the scenic features of Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
And many more places abroad and at home.
I watch Daring Abroad. I like the stories which people bring.
Daring Abroad every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. with repeats every Sunday at 1:30 p.m. on NTV.
To get Sala Zangu by Ilagosa wa Ilagosa, dial star 812 star 832 hash. Skiza na Nation.
it. You're going to take your oxtail and then you're going to brown it.
Over the years, several men have been considered the epitome of the England footballer. Clean-cut, sporting, fair, and, of course, an excellent player.
Santon, a fun new world of flavor. Fruity freshness in every sip.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV as we take a look at the state of the nation today. In just less than 24 hours, we have been told that the opposition is still planning and insisting on going to the streets to continue with their demonstrations, but also a lot of anxiety over what happened on Monday during those demonstrations and the aftermath, the destruction of property, the loss of life, and what we witnessed and transpired that day. And we're almost winding up on the paper. We're having a conversation on the media and exactly how fair it has been in its coverage. But I want us to continue with this as well. NCIC, Nurdin Kagai said toothless dog. I don't know why, but NCIC says adds to the calls for Ruto-Raila talks. Pressure continues to mount on President William Ruto and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga to come to a truce and quell the strife in the country. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission and a group of eminent Kenyans are the latest to root for dialogue to end the discord. NCC chairperson Samuel Kobe, you can see his face there, saying Kenyans are taking the law into their own hands is a recipe for chaos and called for immediate stop to the demonstrations and counter demonstrations and the adoption of dialogue. He acknowledged that there are deep issues that need to be addressed, including the high cost of living, poverty, structural inequality, urging Odinga to seek alternative ways to address those particular issues. Now, Nurdin, we have seen hardline stances from leaders across the political divide, and there have been accusations. Who is to blame and who wants what? But Kenyans are in the middle, and we've seen young people reportedly being used by politicians on the same. We've seen statements that have been made on social media. Then what does it mean with all these mounting calls for dialogue and these hardline stances that we've seen, right? We have Odinga saying, no, we must address these issues, and the only way to address these issues is by going to the streets or having the president come and talk to us and, probably address these issues while we're having a sit down. But the president says, no, we cannot have a sit down. We cannot have a conversation if you're going to go to the streets and continue with the demonstrations. What next? What next for us as Kenyans?
The problem is that they have an ego competition to see who has the biggest ego and who will come down first. And that is a sad reality, because that then tells you where are you as a Kenyan in that conversation. Because hardline stands means I'm making it as hard as it can be for you so that you actually come to and listen to my terms. And the sad reality is that if you are a foreigner and flew into Kenya today, you'd think we have an election in the next 2 weeks. The political temperature is up there. And the sad reality is that they don't understand that the more they fight, I don't know what they're fighting for, but in politics they say the eye for interest is always constant. As they fight, those who they want to lead or they purport to lead are the ones who are suffering. Because when you talk about high cost of living, with the Machozi Monday and Thursday every other week, it won't come down, of course. If you're talking about high cost of living and you're using 802 or 804 million to purchase vehicles and going ahead and adding 50 more chief assistant secretaries, that doesn't help. Because at the end of the day, where is this common man that all campaign on a platform of the economy, how they want to improve the lives of the hustler, or how they want to improve the lives of those who are, as they were being called, Hawinde and the destitute. So at the end of the day, the leaders need to understand that Kenya is bigger and better than all of them. Because at the end of the day, if there is no Kenya, then there is no country.
Let me ask you, if there is no dialogue, what other alternative do we have?
You see, at the end of the day, whether they like it or not, they'll end up talking. That is how it is. But for now, like I told you, it's an ego contest. Who will come down first? That is why they all have hardliners. One, if you check, they all have those hardline stands where they believe that if I make my conditions more stringent, he or she might actually come down. So until when? That is the question. Because you have a government that promised things in 100 days, in a Bible, things are not changing. And then you have now the opposition that now has decided that they will make life as hard as it can be for the government. So you ask yourself as a Kenyan, where do I go? Because the sad reality is, if scenes from Kibra, scenes from Kondele, scenes from Madari, as it was last week, scenes from Dagoretti North, where a police vehicle was actually touched, and they ended up cutting down that vehicle and sold it as scrap metal, and then scenes from Northlands yesterday, on Monday. So what will happen on Thursday? Because if you see this, it's kind of escalating. With every demonstration, there's something new. So you are left to ask, if every Monday and Thursday will be a holiday, quote unquote, so those who actually are casuals or earn by the day, what happens to them? You get, at the end of the day. So that is why we're saying there's political bad manners. But at the end of the day, politics is what is causing all these problems. Because someone somewhere believes it is my time to run the country, and someone feels we also feel like we were meant to run this country. And
but
so
the election is over, right?
And that's a sad reality, because it's a cycle. You know, we finish elections to campaign for the next elections. The president is on record saying how he'll easily win 2027, and that how the opposition leader won't even have agents. That tells you, and if you look at the UDA SG, because, you know, if we're talking about comments about Northlands and Spectra, the UDA SG is on record saying how he'll send people to Karen, to Kitusuru, and certain homes. So it's the utterances that are actually causing these problems. Okay. The day they realize that, you know, a tongue is a very powerful thing. The day they realize that whatever they say, they do have supporters who blindly follow them. And that is now, it comes back to you as a Kenyan. Not everything you are told, you end up doing. But the sad reality is that in Africa, you are impoverished so that they can rule you. Okay. So that when you're given that 500 bob, or someone gives you a few things here and there, you end up causing havoc. Because if, for example, the IG commences investigations in the DCI, and they end up arresting those people who went into that farm, are we sure at the end of the day, those who sent them will actually be indicted with them? That is a question. So you ask yourself as a Kenyan, it's more or less like use and dump to sell a political message. Okay. So I'm trying to show my might, and I use this hopeless Kenyan so that I can be able to show you that I have power at the end of the day.
All right. Abdullahi, when you go through the social media of some of the leaders affiliated to either parties across the political divide, you notice some statements, utterances that have been made, even, you know, perhaps in the public, that are not so rosy, that would perhaps be deemed to be insightful.
Now, before we went for break, we were talking about the role of the media.
Correct.
And how some people are you know, seeing that a lot of prominence is given. Well, there is that saying in journalism that when a man bites the dog, that's the news. So in the middle of it is, where do you, but the media we have in this country is private. So we do not have, a KBC belongs to Kenyans, but it is as dead as its televisions when they were not covered in the riot, because those in government have given its instruction, which is a very sad thing. KBC is like BBC that's funded by the taxpayer. So others have to make a profit. I am sure you cannot say that the media is not doing a good job. I mean, NTV has a section where you do the fact checking. Right. I mean, Obuya is covering crime. We have seen what was happening to the video shared by Babu Owino. So without journalism, a lot of these things, first of all, could not have been seen. But we live in a country where we Muslims, we are told, if you have nothing good to say, just keep quiet. There is a reason why when you talk, people listen. What does this show? This is a country, and I told you from the beginning, this country was not laid on the foundation of the rule of law. Castes are already in offices. They are going to offices, and, you know, proudly they are sharing photos. So-and-so is being ushered in. This is you know, a position the court has said it has stopped them assuming office, their salary and everything else. Yet, what are they doing? So will you call that political bad manners or political prostitution? Why would the government allow people define quotes? Once you do that, why are you blaming the guy stealing the one sheep that is, he slaughters it at 2,000 shillings? And I'm sure that goat is between 25 to 30,000. Yet he's selling it at 2,000. Who created that environment? So the politicians in this country have never served the interest of Kenyans, because we have the descendants of the guys who claim to be fighting for independence. Every Kenyan fought for independence. So unless and when the political class will realize, and Kenyans more so, because the guys now who pictures are already on Nation Pictures front page, they are going to be arrested because there is already enough evidence after investigation. If they are charged with theft, what happens, as my brother was saying, they have to say, we were paid. Who paid you? You were paid 3,000. So that was transaction. Whether that transaction now can be taken to court is another thing. You took 3,000, 4,000, you stole somebody's ship, your picture is already on the media. How long can 2,000 sustain you? That is how, bad this country is. So the media should give blackouts to politics of bad manners. If a person is not going to say anything that is going to bring us together, switch off the mic, let him speak, because we have the right to switch off the mic if you're going to escalate.
But look, you have the media, which is a mainstream media, who will report on the things that happen. But then again, you have social media, right? And a lot of information, actually a majority of Kenyans and everyone in the world consumes most of the information from social media, right? So where do you draw the balance between free speech and insightful remarks?
Well, I think first of all, when you talk of social media, is what we call in journalism citizen journalism, where people will record, live event and share. But now remember, misinformation and propaganda is a tool used by people in government and those in power. So people are susceptible to being informed of very, glaring lies. They see it's lie, but they believe in it. I mean, why do you allow the mainstream media? That's because if I want to look for very authentic, I go to Standard, I go to Nation, I go to the Star. I don't look at some boy, filmed something. But sometimes they share live events because the media is not also everywhere.
All right.
So they share also facts from the ground that are very positive. It's not just all the time negative.
Okay, let's hear from Javas. I mean, so social media is a great thing, right? Connecting people across the world and everything, and a great source of information as well. Good, but also, that's the dark side of social media. It's unmanageable. And you have the leaders who've made statements on social media. Nowadays, we get our press statements, most of them sometimes from government agencies, through their Twitter handles. So then I'm still going to ask you the same question. Then where do you draw the balance between the bad and the good?
Well, social media serves very many purposes, including entertainment. But I can assure you that if certain social media handles are known to be very factual, independent, people will always rely on such handles. Trouble is that social media, and as much as every other Kenyan, many Kenyans, are happy cowards. In fact, we stand in very distant compounds and point fingers where brave men used to live, because brave men are very few. Thing is, why is it that we are so shy to stand firm on the ground of truth and fact and prove it willingly and gladly? We are so afraid to call out big names or even small names that are misleading the country. If we stand on the ground of fact and truth, I can assure you, people will depend on that handle, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or other. Now, you speak of institutions that even channel some critical communication through social media. Right. Of course, that is the age in which we are. We cannot frown at technology or shun it. But as we embrace it, let us put it into good use. Like anything else, fire today, we know how good it is. But the fact that we know that it's destructive, do we avoid it? No, we use it for the good cause. Warming up our bodies and cooking food, etc. So we can use social media for the greater good for the good cause of humanity. That's what we need to do. Now, as we look at, for example, all these statements and social media and various platforms, look at, for instance, some two critical statements that came out yesterday. One by Chairman Musa Faki of the African Union.
And we'll get into that, right?
Yes, and second by Honorable Raila Odinga. I don't know you'll also get into that. And also by the IG, the Inspector General of Police. In terms of critical reflections and analysis, you realize that there are certain components that are very critical to have the people understand. Some have lamented at the statement by Chairman Faki by saying that AU appreciates the place of the outcome of the last general election, the determination by the IEBC, as well as the Supreme Court of Kenya. And some are very sad at that fact. But you see, just like the African Union is giving that factual statement and being alive of the fact that indeed that is what is the material reality in which we live, remember that the African Union also has got various critical guidelines of election observation, for example, of 1992, and they have got measures as to how they should agree to or disagree with an outcome of a democratic process. Remember that today the African Union will not embrace any country whose leader has risen to power by way of extra-constitutional mechanisms. Just like, for example, the Amsterdam Treaty of the European Union, which provides mechanisms and principles of justice, rule of law, and democracy that must be adhered to by the EU member states.
All right.
These are real facts. Now, the other thing is that when you look at the statement by Honorable Raila Odinga yesterday, he said something that I find a bit curious. One, that he will agree to meet President Ruto if at all President Ruto stops co-opting members of the opposition. 2, if the servers are opened. 3, if the cost of living goes down as a last thing. Now, if that is the order of priority, then do we appreciate that the interest of the common man is the primary thing in these liberty demonstrations? And I call it liberty demonstrations as intended by Article 37. But do we really have liberty demonstrations? In fact, what was supposed to be liberty dream by way of Article 37 is now liberty nightmare by the conduct of our politicians and the manner in which they are conducting these demonstrations. I say this with facts that we all know. If at all the condition here in the right of Article 37 is being peaceable and unarmed, have we seen any deliberate and conscious effort on the part of these leaders to try and have their people not to pelt stones at the police or torch police cars, etc.? Another thing, is it not curious that, and I'm not here so much hitting at the leaders of the opposition, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka was very instrumental in the South Sudan peace agreement. Yet his part of demonstrations that are not peaceful.
But this is what the opposition
Honorable
did say.
Martha Karua was Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs.
Right.
Yet she's part of a team that wants to storm State House and eject President William Ruto. How constitutional is that? You see, these are facts that the people must ventilate about and consciously reflect on.
But then, you see, the narrative cuts across these two statements that we've had, right?
Yes.
So just the other day, the opposition leader said, look, ours was a peaceful protest and that it was the police who instigated this together with, according to them reportedly, allegedly, that there were goons that were facilitated by leaders within the ruling coalition to cause mayhem in their protests, and that's where they were. But of course, the government has distanced itself against those kinds of accusations, right?
May I respond
just as you
briefly?
wind up right there.
Yeah, just briefly. One, that early in the morning in Migori, we saw a road barricaded before even police arrived. To what extent had security officers interfered with the demonstrators in Migori that morning, before security officers arrived? Secondly, here in Kibra, we saw that they were already pelting stones at police officers and even passers-by. We saw it.
Which the opposition said was not the protesters, their protesters, their supporters.
So how did they know that these are our protesters and these are not our protesters? Do they have a register?
Okay.
Now, in South Africa, we saw EFF even having marshals guiding the process. In India, we had Mahatma Karamchand Gandhi with his Satyagraha movement, non-violent movement.
We'll talk about this proposed legislation, by the way, by the government.
And we saw it was peaceful and he was leading from the front.
Okay.
Here we are leading from armored vehicles.
All right. Let's hear from Gabriel.
Very quickly, Zainab. I told you last time we were here, we need to deconstruct what we call, rather the articles, 37 that gives us the right to picket and demonstrate.
Actually have it here, right.
Yeah. I told you those articles, first of all, the rights to picket and demonstrate does not give me and you a blanket ticket to terrorize Kenyans, does not give us a blanket ticket to ensure that lives are destroyed, businesses, as we saw, are also destroyed, children are unable to go to school, and that's not it. Your vehicles are vandalized, and what have you. What it has brought, and I think, Javas, this is what we need to be alive at. I want us to talk about the environment. What does the maandamano, as we've seen it, what do they portend? To me, is the minute you create an environment which allows the opportunity for destruction, you can no longer point at Articles 37 because you have already messed it up from the word go. Now, I have seen peaceful demonstrations that are not politically instigated. And I can tell you how. There was a time KPMDU, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, when they do their maandamano, they converge somewhere, they walk, very well organized. They end up in one particular place and they are addressed by their leaders and they go home. That is peaceful. I have seen teachers. They move from where they are, they go to Jogo House, they put their placards, and after that, they go home. No car is vandalized, no human life is lost, and what have you. That is what is entitled in our Articles 37. That is the maandamano we understand.
According, right, just find out then I'll ask you.
The political maandamano that we have seen are geared to certain results. And this we've known back to back, and this is where my problem is. You know very well that you will create an environment which offers opportunity for what we are talking about.
Was that environment created for the opposition, who, by the way, allegedly said, and we did see, that, look, we want to be given by the police the protection, the involvement of the police to hold this protest peacefully. We want to come to the KICC. They were not allowed.
But Zainab, let me tell you, the minute somebody says that, in fact, that is in itself a dangerous statement. And, oh, we are going to have our maandamano and we need police protection. That is the minute most of these people see the police, they start pelting them with stones. And now I'm not telling you something I read. I've seen the minute they see a police vehicle, they pelt it with stones. Because that is the last.
But that should not be the case, right?
In fact, that's why I'm telling you, we need to sit down and relook at the Article 37 and the rights it gives us. Because I have not seen any political maandamano that is peaceful. And that's why I'm telling you, Zainab, I think they are geared to bring about certain results. Today, if there is that meeting that people are calling about, oh, let's sit down between the opposition and government. Let's sit down. Tell you what, tomorrow, the maandamanos are done. The vehicles, you will not see anybody pelting stones at police. You will not see any businesses being run. So that it tells you there is creation of this environment that has been discussed in and out to ensure that when they talk about maandamano, it's actually a veiled planning of what we are able to see. Otherwise, we would have seen by now, we would have seen peaceful.
Let's hear from
peaceful people coming,
right.
you know, and doing their walks or whatever you want to call them.
Nudin.
You know, Zainab, they usually say that in as much as we are apportioning blame, blame must be apportioned equally. In as much as we are condemning how demonstrations have been carried out, we also need to call out the police for being overzealous. You see, let's go back to Monday, the 20th of this month. They called for a demonstration, that is the opposition, and they told their people, our meeting point is KICC. What do the police do? They end up saying these people are goons. One, they say that demonstration is illegal. They start from there, all right? Then they end up saying that these people are goons. So what do? They stop them from leaving wherever they are to KICC. That now is mismanagement of the situation. Because what do these people do? Now you push them to a situation where now you're inviting them into a contest. And that is why we're having stones being thrown. You see, there's a common saying that says, we never wanted to use armed struggle. It is what the oppressors imposed upon us as a path for us to take. You see, if you look at South Africa, since people are quoting South Africa, let us quote it. This is what happened in South Africa. It's not that there were no issues, there were issues. But the EFF had the police marching with them. You see, the moment you start saying that these people are goons and they're going to create anarchy, which anarchy was created on Monday before the issue started. There was nothing. The issue was they wanted to leave their homes and go to KICC to meet Raila. Now, if nothing had happened between their homes and KICC, what was the point of putting them in a cocoon and blocking them from going to KICC? That is what I'm talking about, mismanagement.
But how would you explain a police vehicle that was also burnt in Kawangware on Monday?
No, you see, I'm not talking about this Monday. I'm talking about the first demonstration. You see, this is why I'm saying the police got a little bit... You see, there's something called proportionate force. What force is proportionate? Now, when I shoot a protester with a gun and they have no weapon or don't have a gun, is that force proportionate? What force is that at the end of the day? Because we're not talking about those who also lost their lives. There's a student who died in Maseno, and the IAG is on record coming out with so much bravado telling us how nobody should intimidate that officer that shot that person. So at the end of the day, are we not supposed to ask questions? You see, let us also be honest. If these people wanted to demonstrate last Monday, that's why I'm quoting South Africa, because we're quoting South Africa, right? They were marching with police officers. They actually went and coordinated with them. Now, if
so what is the problem? Is it that our constitution has a problem with regard to the same? Because look, we have the Public Order Act, right? And we have this, the assembly and demonstration picketing, and Article 37 of the constitution, which clearly states that. So what's the problem? Is it, and as we're comparing with South Africa, we saw those protests happening the way they did. In our situation, it was completely different, right?
Yeah.
Chaos rocked those different parts, and the intensity of the destruction was unpalatable. So then, where's the problem? Is it our constitution?
You see, the problem is, this is where the problem started. When the Azimio team took a notice to the police officers. You see, the police officers have this notion that you're seeking permission. Permission for doing what? The constitution, it doesn't talk about permission at the end of the day. Neither does the order. You see, it is a notification. That is the problem. That is where we start from. You see,
but there are procedures that are already...
I know, let me just finish, Zainab. Let me just finish. So at the end of the day, this is where the problem started. They took their notice as per them. When the notice was taken, they were told the demonstration is illegal. That is where the first battle line was drawn. Now the second battle line came now on the day of the maandamano, where their protesters wanted to march to KICC. Now the question is, you block them from going to KICC. So what do they result in doing? Now they want a contest to the police officers. And that is why we end up having destruction of property. Now the question is, what would have happened if the police officers watch guard until they go to KICC? You know, there's this talk about, oh, they want to storm State House. They can't do that at the end of the day. And they know it. You see, the right now former Prime Minister knows he can't storm State House. And that is why when he saw himself after the elections with Uhuru, he went to Kari, never went to State House at the end of the day. You see,
but it was an illegal act at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, yes. But at the end of the day, you need wisdom to handle certain situations.
Okay.
You see, because if, this is what I'm saying, if, for example, you become too overzealous, so this is why up to today, we're still talking about maandamano. You look at South Africa, for example, he marched, that is Malema and his team, marched on Monday. They were saying Ramaphosa will fall that day. Did he fall? He never fell. Is he still the president? Of course he is. So at the end of, that's why I'm saying the police needs to have wisdom at the end of the day.
But the dynamics are quite different, remember,
it's not quite different, because whatever Azimio is talking about, as compared to what Malema is talking about, the allegations as per Ramaphosa and what they're talking about, Kenya Kwanza, are two different allegations.
Okay, we have to take a break.
Zainab.
Yes, very quickly,
Quickly. Well, the edicts of the Constitution and statutory provisions are not organized suggestions. They are edicts, they are peremptory. And we must appreciate that intention is critical. Yes, of course, Article 37, which is enabled in terms of operationalization by way of the Public Order Act, in terms of matters to do with the demonstration,
So do we
picketing,
read them
etc.
together?
Of course.
Right.
Because Article 37, the Constitution cannot be read only, independently.
You have to have
All its
some
provisions must be read
The problem
conjunctively,
is not the law.
but we have got the enabling statutes. Because the provisions of a Constitution, though critical, are not comprehensive. And that's why we've got statutes. Remember too that Article 259 of the Constitution provides that interpretation of the Constitution must be done in such a way that advances the rule of law, good governance, etc.
Okay.
Now, look, even when Azimio team said that they want to converge at KICC for purposes of maandamano, with the initial deliberation and communication and pronouncements that they will storm State House, that in itself demonstrates the intent of that assembly. So, in terms of us reflecting on that communication,
All right.
is that intention of marching to State House,
Okay.
not to deliver a note, but to eject a president, really, is that within the brackets of the rule of law?
We have to take a break, Javas. Right. Abdullah, please just hold on that. Your thought. We're going to come back. We're going to hear from you. But we have to take this break. When we come back, we will be having this conversation as we wind up and looking at the solution, because tomorrow is another day.
My baby is famous for her happy dancing moves because she's always happy. What's the reason for this happiness? Molfix dryness. It's what all mothers dream of. Come on, mothers, try Molfix baby diapers and be part of our happiness movement.
Are you facing challenges in following up on cargo compensation claims from your overseas insurer? You can now insure your cargo with your local insurance companies instead of filing similar claims with foreign insurance. When you insure your imports with local insurers, you will save more as you will get more competitive rates, and yet you will help build a more stable and resilient economy while also creating job opportunities locally. This message is brought to you by the Intergovernmental Standing Committee on Shipping.
From a working nation to a vaccination, ni bad health ita overtax the nation. Pata chanjo COVID assassination, you truthfully jo ili harass the nation. Ukipata chanjo unanilinda pia, kujilinda ni kujisimamia. Lazima follow up na mabooster pia, sanitize maagizo zingatia.
Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo. Pata chanjo uwe chonjo, Kanairo tuko chonjo.
Open your eyes, Diego. What more can you expect from a girl like her if her mother is a drug trafficker?
Why don't you just
You stay out of this!
You just won the lottery for having seen me.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm going to pay for your silence. How much is it?
How dare you do such a thing?
How much? Think about all the things you're going to be able to get. Clothes, perfumes, luxuries that you can't give yourself.
Now tell me, when did you touch the drug packages to get your fingerprints on them? Because you never did it in front of me?
I didn't.
Head over heels.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol.
In your paper this week, to gain from Kenya riots as East Africa stays on edge.
DRC okays extension of the regional force but on negotiated terms. Outlook: Pacific nations join hands in a deal that will see an end to further development of fossil fuels. Plus our opinion leaders: a region divided by the rainbow flag. Charles Onyango Obo: immunity for what? Hide not impunity in unwarranted gifts. Generali Ulimwengu: women leaders prove great democracy is female, leaving power when they should. LC Eakuze Magazine: calm down. An African artist's sensational song and dance rally the world against Iran. For these and more stories, get your copy of the East African.
Cheki we, shika pesa yako nishikisha hapa mbele.
Yani, ulikuwa unanitia do?
Unawezaje nipatia pesa fake?
Sasa basi, unajua ilikuwa imbo.
That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Over the years, several men have been considered the epitome of the England footballer. Clean-cut, sporting, fair, and, of course, an excellent player.
Santon, a fun new world of flavor. Fruity freshness in every sip.
It's been quite a journey from starting from the SME space and navigating my way into the corporate sector. As a woman, I've had instances where I have to compete with men, so I have to have double the information, double the preparation, double the quality of information that I give to customers, because at first they look at you and the customers, you know, there's the stereotyping, whether can you really serve them, can you give them the solutions they're looking for. So I've had to read double than my male counterparts. I've had to research, I've had to consult much more to make sure that I have quality information that customers can trust, that I can give the solutions they're looking for. This year's theme, equity, stands out a lot because women are not fighting for equality. Women are fighting for a chance to sit at the table, just like the men, where we get equal opportunity in terms of jobs, in terms of businesses, in terms of just creating and innovating.
All right, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for staying with us as we continue with this conversation this morning. But just some breaking news that we have received right now. Banisa Member of Parliament Kulo Maalim Hassan has passed away. He was receiving treatment at a city hospital here in Nairobi. This has now been confirmed by family members. He was hit by a motorcycle rider in Nairobi. That happened last weekend. This is the Nation Africa reporting on this particular incident. And this is just news that we have received right now. He was in hospital after that accident happened last week. The Banisa Member of Parliament, Kulo Maalim Hassan, who has now passed away, he was receiving treatment. And if I was just to open this newspaper right now to just see what else, any other information that we can get. He died on Tuesday evening at a hospital here in Nairobi. He was receiving treatment following a hit-and-run motorcycle accident in Nairobi. His relative Mohammed Aji said Hassan was hit on Saturday by a speeding rider at Capital Center. He was taken to Reliance Hospital in South Sea and later transferred to the Aga Khan Hospital, where he passed away. He's a second-term member of Parliament. He was last seen in Mandera on the 20th of March during the launch of a task force report on the health situation in Mandera County. He was elected to Parliament in 2017 on an Economic Freedom Party ticket and defended his seat in 2022 on a UDM ticket. He won that election. He's survived by 3 wives and 16 children. And of course, he will be buried in Nairobi according to the Islamic rites. That's the information that we have been able to gather at this point. Abdullah, you come from Mandera as well. So this, I'm sure, is quite an unfortunate news as well from you.
Yeah, it's a sad day, right? And inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He was also a friend. I know him. I've worked with his brother. I know the family. We will say that our condolences to Kenyans and to the family and friends and the people of Mandera. What does this show us? Kullu nafsu da'iqatul maut. We will all die one day, and from the actions of this country, we are not building the future of our children, yet we are fighting over things that are materially. You will not go with anything. So what does that also show about our policy in transport sector, where roads are very dangerous, whether you're driving or you're on a rider. So I was told that he was in ICU for the last 3 days, I think. And we say it's a bad day for us, and we mourn as a country. He was a soft-spoken man. I have known him for the last 15 years. But as we say, every soul shall test death. We don't know when we are going to die ourselves. So we will just pray for him. May Allah accord him Jannatul Firdaus. And on the issue of as we say, Banisa is a constituency in Mandera. It is one of the 6 constituencies. He was a second-term member. You know, he comes from a very known family. They normally call it, you know, a Sheto family. They are very learned family from previously in Banisa area, Malkamari, Mandera. His brother is a head teacher. Others are also retired teachers. He has brothers who worked in Sudan as an attaché, Tahir. Right. So we condole with the family, and we tell them pole, and you know, that is the sad reality of this world, that every soul one day shall come and rest. Yeah.
It's quite unfortunate, but we'll continue to bring just more information as we get, because we're yet to receive an official statement as well from the family of the late Member of Parliament, Kulo Maalim Hassan. He is the Banisa Member of Parliament. And just getting back into our conversation this morning, tomorrow will be another day, and the opposition insists that the planned protests will continue. They'd already informed, you know, their protesters and their supporters that every Monday and Thursday they will be having this, you know, demonstrations until some of their demands have been met. But let me ask you this, Abdullah. Can you state clearly from where you sit, can you get to the point of understanding the kind of issues that the opposition is hoping to be addressed? Is it clear to you as a Kenyan?
No, the clear thing is politics. The Raila is playing politics. He's lost the election. He's, you know, lost it in the Supreme Court. What else does he know? He knows how to play politics, whether he plays it in the right way, that's the interest of the country, or his own personal interest.
They've talked about the cost of living, the issue of opening up the
well,
the issue of the constitution of the IEBC.
Did it start today? The cost of living was with us. Because if this country had people who are authentic in their leadership, who are honest in their leadership, who are truthful, today we will be farming everywhere. Because a week ago we were complaining about 4 seasons of failed, you know, rains. Today we are complaining where 12 people have been killed by rains. Did we plan well even for the people who are living in the north? I mean, what happens to emaciated goats when it rains? They will all die. And that's why you see in Marsabit and Mandera people are losing goats. So we are very bad in planning. In the history of this country, everything is chaotic. Tell me one thing that works very well. Look at the roads. You go to the hospitals. People pay the watchman to get them cards so that you come late. There are issues you cannot. The issues we are grappling with are not constitutional. The issue we are grappling with are not in the statutory law. Trust is not legislated. Honesty is not legislated. You know, trustworthy is not legislated. It's a culture that you develop for a very long time. What is our culture? My brother was talking about South Africa. In the top 10 cities in Africa that are the most dangerous, Kenya is not even appearing in number 20. South Africa has the 3 top cities. The most dangerous in Africa are in South Africa. So to some extent, we are more peaceful in our sense than South Africa. South Africans are very violent people. The shops in South Africa kill each other in Durban, in South Africa, in businesses.
Javas doesn't agree.
No, it's not about agreeing. It's about statistics that we have. So I'm talking about culture that has the culture of robbery with violence compared to South Africa. We are, very slim number.
You're talking about legislation. I'm going to ask about
so I'm
this
saying
question
you cannot, regardless
break.
of how many legislation you bring, what has the legislation resolved? We have very beautiful laws, yes.
When the CS says that, they plan to propose this new legislation to govern how mass action, takes place, when we talk about cleanup calls, when we talk about the number of demonstrators and all these things, isn't this something that will be able to sort of guide future protests and, demonstrations so that we don't end up where we are right now?
People die in this country every day, whether it's extrajudicial killing, killed by the police or the military or security officers. Why should that be any better? I'm telling you, we are struggling with a culture where those in leadership will try to use the law to suffocate and make sure that others, those who are in the lower cadre, are controlled. It's just a controlling mechanism. The law is not there to control people. The law is there to make it's a deterrent that if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Because if you are a protester and you are told to protest peacefully and you assault somebody, you'll be arrested because you assaulted somebody. If you rob somebody, you'll be arrested because you robbed somebody. That is the work of the police. But look at the police commissioner. He comes to tell us that I have denied you. You have no right to deny us anything. You are there to make sure there is law and order. On the people's side, are there instances where the protesters were ingenuine in their protest? Yes. But have they also been provoked? Because sometimes when you limit the presence of police in the roads, there was a police officer in Juja who ran away from the protester and he had a gun. So he made a decision either to run away than kill someone. So it's a judgment call. So the police need to make sure that they guard property, yes. The issue of going to State House, the issue of the server, those are just political rhetorics to whip the emotions of the people. Because as you look, Raila was here when the prices of rice and unga and everything was up. He was here 5 years. He was very quiet, very comfortable. Now he's not comfortable. The problem is Raila is not comfortable now. When he was with Uhuru, he was comfortable. Now he's not comfortable. He was in charge of infrastructure. He had guzzlers, he had bodyguards, he had GK cards, he had a budget maybe to some extent. Now he doesn't have all that now.
Don't you find the genuineness of some of these things that the opposition is calling for?
Like for IEBC, we need a very impartial panel. Because IEBCs, now, the guys who are coming up are going to stay with us in the next general elections. So if they do, then what kind of IEBC commissioners do we have? We have men and women who respect the Constitution. When they are sworn in and they carry the Bible or the Quran, or whatever they believe in, we need men who will tell us that this is what we did. Transparently, verifiable elections. Now, how do you legislate that?
Okay.
You cannot legislate guts. You cannot legislate feelings. You cannot legislate trust. It's about a man standing up and saying, why do people respect some people in Kenya and not others?
Okay.
Why do we mention Maraga? Why do we mention so and so? Why don't we mention others?
Okay. Yes, Javas, then we get to Gabriel. Over legislation, but isn't this something we need?
Well, I think on the suggested legislation
proposals, right,
by the CS for Interior, Professor Kithure Kindiki, is highly welcome because it provides some sanity with regard to how the implementation or pursuit of the right to picket, demonstrate, and assemble in Article 37 can be implemented. Remember that the suggestions by Professor Kindiki are titrated from a judgment made by Justice Makau in Wambugu, Ngunjiri, versus IG and 2 others of 2019 EKLR, where he said that it may be very important for the place where the demonstration will take place to be clear to the police for security to be provided and guidance, the geographical area, so that there is a semblance of civility in how these demonstrations are conducted. That is how I think we need to have it. Further, I think it is aimed at stopping the buccaneers of demonstrations who loot, who cause mayhem, from exercising their willful destruction of property and disturbance of law and order, from whether they are strangers to the planned demos or they are part of it, from causing pain to the non-participants of such demonstrations. So I think we need such kind of statute. But you see, statutes alone are not enough. For instance, Zainab, you and I appreciate that we have got even values enshrined in our constitution, but who follows those values? Our politicians are leading from the back in terms of respecting and embracing those values of good governance. So the issue here is a culture that we have. Because when you look at the issue of the pursuit of Article 37 and the right to demonstrate, there is nothing right that is left in the aftermath of those demonstrations. There is always pain, looting, losses, loss of life, and an ISO spectacle left to everybody else. This mayhem is not what is contemplated in Article 37 or the African Charter on Human and People's Rights in Article 10 of the same, or even the ICCPR's Article 21. We need to appreciate that civility has got a place in a civil order within the governance framework. If we were the United Kingdom, which has got, quote unquote, an unwritten constitution, what would happen to Kenya? An unwritten constitution. Here in Kenya, we have got one of the most elaborate constitutions in the world, yet still it does not serve us. I say it does not serve us because we don't respect even the provisions of the very constitution. Now, is it not in 2016 where we had even the leadership, present leadership of Azimio, indicating that the IBC commissioners must be ejected from their offices? Is it not the same leader of Azimio who is insisting that for there to be talks and restoration of order and the calling off of maandamano, that the Cherera 4 must be reinstated? If they are to be reinstated, under what legal process? Yet the three, for example, resigned. They were not prevailed upon to resign. They resigned. So if you demand that they are reinstated, by who, under what provision or shadow of law? So I think the deprivation we have...
Do you feel there's a lot of gray area, some, some darkness and perhaps not clarity with regards to what Azimio really wants?
Well, I think it is very clear what Azimio wants. Azimio wants a place in the limelight of leadership and governance. It wants a place. Remember that being in Siberia is not very comfortable. Being in the cold is not very comfortable. And the evidence of history demonstrates that those who are closer to power, the warmth of power, with the provision of the largesse of the power and the benefits that come with it, they are comfortable.
Okay.
But you see, the other thing is this. If at all it was very clear that the issue is primarily about the cost of living, do you know that today President William Ruto cannot address the press and say that from today there are no taxes to be paid or the tax regime has been amended? He cannot do that. It's the work of Parliament. Right. So why can't we use the legislative arm to amend the pieces of legislation to change our tax regime?
But it is, you have had, accusations from the other side of the political divide, like saying this is a captured parliament.
Great. Just yesterday, we had the budget committee sitting, and members from Kenya Kwanza and members from Azimio were in that committee.
Right.
Parliament works well at the committee level. If at all other parliamentary duties are ongoing, what will stop Parliament from attending to issues to do with tending or amending to the tax regime in this country?
All right. Let's hear from Gabriel. But look, but it's still a question that I feel like we haven't really addressed. I think let me see if Taifa Leo is asking this question, right? Inspector General alikuwa wapi? And I think it's a question that we keep you know, coming across, and the accusations and the allegations that why were the police missing? Why are the police doing this? Why is the police, of course the police works for the government, right?
Correct.
But is the police being used to enforce illegal actions against those who are protesting against the government?
You see, Zainab, the reason why you may never get a satisfactory answer from so many people when you ask that question is because the police must act based on the whims or be subjective to the people asking that particular question. For instance, when somebody is destroying property, fully well knowing that he's contravening the laws of the land or the Public Order Act, he is okay because the police are not in sight, and he is fine with that. But when that same thing is subjected on to a person or property where he feels he is in support, then he will question where the police are. And this is something we've seen, you know, back to back, you know, happening in this great nation of ours. So I am mindful. I am very mindful where that question is coming from and the kind of response somebody may be looking. The police, they have, or you know, they also have laws that they must follow, and key among them is to protect life, to protect property. And I've not seen any law, and I've not seen anybody saying that they are condoning the acts that has actually befell on Kenyans. The police and the DPP, I really liked what the officer of the DPP, you know, said yesterday, and I'm confident that if they follow it to the core, where he says he needs answers coming from the IG of police, it tells me that he has the pulse. He has his, you know, work cut out, because he knows what he is really looking for, and he wants the IG to provide those answers. And I'm confident if he pushes it, he'll get the answers that he deserves. We saw he followed it to the core with the issue at, well, what happened at Matiangi's house in Karen, and you saw the DPP really, you know, was key in writing a report that came, you know, out of that investigation. Having said that, I also think we need to be quite sober when we are discussing this issue of the Public Order Act and the picketing and the demonstrations. Zainab, we know very well that nothing has been followed yet so far as this maandamano, Mondays now and Thursdays, you know, go. We cannot overemphasize what we have seen happen. Now, we cannot also take for granted what Honorable Raila is talking about when he says, or when he puts the three things which he wants addressed. Key among them, IEBC and opening of the servers. Me and you know that is a near impossibility. And the reason why we are saying this, it went through all the offices, again, mandated by the Constitution, that are supposed to look into this. For you to open these servers, you probably may require a court order to do that. When they said that they needed the IEBC system audited, were they audited at that time? Remember, they were in government. Why was it not done then? They had a window to produce all this evidence in court. They were unable to, hence why it was called hot air. We come to the cost of living. If you look at Geopol, what they are saying, it is not a particular problem in this country. This is a global phenomenon we are being faced with. You know, the question of the former handshake, me and you are here when it was happening. And as a matter of fact, we were in this media house discussing that, that handshake at the foothills of Harambee House. But what has happened all those years? What was so strategic? What was put in place to alleviate the cost of food as we are seeing it today? Are we being factual when we say the food prices and the cost of the basket have gone down or has gone high? Are we really deliberate in our findings that what we are telling the common mwananchi is truthful? Me say not, because I have seen different, and many people have seen different. However, pushing it to the last to the last one, which I believe is where we need to really try and guide Kenyans, is on matters of picketing and my rights. Because I know somewhere along the road, Zainab, we have lost it. And we need to pivot back to what really makes sense. And what really makes sense is that, Zainab, nobody in the Public Order Act should push you into picketing if you don't want it. The person who's saying they have a right to picket must also allow you that right to hold that young child of yours and take them to school undisturbed and ensure that that kid has gotten what they need to learn.
And that's why I asked earlier on, do we need more legislation on the same Java
we already have legislation. Right. What we do not have is people following the law. And
but also the opposition is saying on following the law, we also need the police to protect us while we're doing this.
And that's why I'm saying it's a catch-22. Okay. What we all know and what we are not saying is what does Azimio, and in this case, what does Raila Odinga want? Raila Odinga, in all honesty.
Is it clear to you what they want?
Of course, of course. Well, they have said, even though they are running away from it, and he will say, we don't want a handshake. They are pushing to have what you're calling dialogue. Now, dialogue is really veiled in, let me come, we sit down. Now, what does that sit down mean? And you can write this down and underline it twice. It means a handshake.
Okay, but
a handshake by any other name.
And that's the opposition says that's not what they want. I'll come to Jarvis in a moment because we're almost winding up on time. You know, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to some of those issues. But also, as we're having this conversation, tomorrow we're going to be seeing another round of demonstrations organized by the opposition leader and, of course, the other leaders as well within the opposition and the Azimio team. But at the end of it all, we do not want to find ourselves in the same situation that we did see on Monday last week, and of course more intensified this week on Monday. So then as we move forward, what do we need to do? A piece of advice.
You see, what we need to do is to follow the law. That is all we need, because that is where all the issues of arson, robbery, all this, they come courtesy of lawlessness. And I see the question there is, where is what Inspector General of Police? To the best of my knowledge, before yesterday he appeared, the last we saw of him was in a photo with the Deputy President, who was conspicuously today either overslept or forgotten to tell us woke up at 5 a.m. Now, what we need moving forward as a country is that, you know, the police are very instrumental in this country. And we see they now have a fund, or rather he controls a fund. If he will allow himself to be misused by politicians, then he will be redoing exactly what those who came before him did. So you'll be solving your issues the same way, and they didn't have a fund directly. So what we want moving forward is a country that we realize that there is tomorrow, there is Friday. Even though there's maandamano on Thursday, there has to be a Friday. Life has to go on Friday. And that's why it's so funny, because after Monday, we moved on Tuesday like nothing happened on Monday. That is Kenya for you.
But we were counting the losses of what happened.
Exactly. Goldfish memory in that it happens, we move on, we wait for the next calamity. Now, for me, I believe the recommendations by Kindiki, if they don't serve any political agenda, they are good. Because at the end of the day, they will serve a certain purpose. But there are things in there that won't work. Like, for example, limitation of protesters, that can't work. Things like saying consent in the areas, that will be hard, because these people will fight. Whoever wants to have a demonstration will have an issue, because they might say those people have been mobilized to refuse a consent. So in finishing, there's something I wanted to say. We do have issues, that is historical injustices. As a country, if we really want to solve those injustices, like he said, from Wagala massacre to the land issues, because land is very emotive in this country. And on Monday, it showed how volatile we are as a country, and something small can just trigger us. For us to solve those issues, these politicians need to give us a break. We need to solve them following the law, so that we implement the TJRC report, the Ndungland report, and the Kroll report.
So you're saying there are much deeper rooted issues.
We have so many issues that people are dying in silence, and they look for an outlet, be it maandamano, be it political expediency. So we need, the politicians need to question themselves. And they need, heads need to roll. A couple of people have to pay so that we actually stop this issue of them inciting Kenyans, and we end up buying our country, the only country that we have. Because if you don't know the importance of peace, take a trip to Rwanda, understand that genocide. then you'll understand the beauty of the peace that you have in a country.
Okay, let me give the rest of the panelists just 30 seconds each to make their final remarks as we move forward from tomorrow. And even as we take a look at that, look, anarchy. We keep hearing this word for the past couple of days, a lot of it. Anarchy, according to Wikipedia, says a society without a government may also refer to a society or group of people that entirely rejects a set hierarchy. But this is not where we are,
well,
right?
we are not there, but we are headed there if you're not careful. You see, when you have a very young, unemployed society, when you have very poor society,
okay,
then everything is possible in this country. Now, the people in charge, I don't want the politicians to give us a break. No, they can't give us a break because we put them there to implement policies, come up with them, and then use our financial very, prudently.
10 seconds.
What we need to do is a country is have leaders who are honest,
right,
who are not thinking about themselves, who will not destroy this country.
All right. Thank you. Javas,
Well,
20 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
Fact,
First, I think the people are being set up along tribal lines. As I'm seated here, I am an honorary Kikuyu, an honorary Turkana, an honorary Mijikenda. We must not have politicians pitting brother against brother, citizen against citizen, as it was, and or Christian against Muslim, as it was in Kibra the other day. Secondly, the issue of anarchy must not even be closer to our borders. We must do that by appreciating that we have got a constitutional order and a government in place to take care of its duties, and therefore it must be recognized by Honorable Raila Odinga, whether he likes it or not. We have got president in place. And thirdly, as he leads his people and his followers to pursue whatever political rights that he is, it is important for us to do it under the umbrella and brackets of the law.
All right. And
Zainab, we don't have Azimio and Kenya Kwanza laws. We have a constitution that holds us, all of us together. We are binded by that constitution. It is a simple thing, Zainab. Let us follow the law, whether it favors you or not.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. We certainly don't have much more time. I was trying to get that caricature by Gadot, but I've missed it. It's on the Daily Nation. It was very interesting. It was about the issue of the CASs and the issue of court orders in this country. I think that's a conversation we should also have. Javas Bigambo, lawyer, governance specialist, Abdullah Alas, policy and governance analyst, as well as journalist. Nurdin Kagai, advocate and political analyst, as well as Gabriel Mudhuma, political and governance analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. We certainly hope tomorrow will be different, at least from what we witnessed this week. Thank you so much for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. You want to stay tuned for that. And remember, we'll always be giving you a 360 coverage of exactly what is happening. My name is Zainab Ismail. Good morning.